Okay, morning everybody. I'm Alistair Kell from BDP. My background is I'm an architect, so I'm here really speaking to you from the perspective of an architect. And at these events, I always feel that I need to apologise because I can't help feeling that I'm about to bring the tone down slightly. I was asked if I would come and present our view on BIM Level 2 progress, the benefits and the challenges. And really, that's what I want to try to quickly take you through. Why we as a business have felt that these are technologies that we need to adopt, the benefit we're seeing, and the challenges that I see ahead of us. So let me begin. Questions at the end, and I hope that I've got something that is relevant and interesting. So I'll start very quickly. This here is a model of a series of models of a project that we are currently delivering in central Manchester. It was designed by Mechanism Architects for University of Manchester. ARP are the engineers working with us. This is the CGI, and works are well advanced on site now. Everything that I'm going to show is a real project. That's also really important for me. We are living by these technologies. We are delivering multiple projects in this way, and we're doing it, I believe, successfully. But I also understand that we're just at the beginning of our journey. So, a little bit about us. Those of you that don't know BDP, we are now 13 offices globally. We recently aligned with a company in Toronto. So we stretch now from Toronto through the UK, Ireland, the Netherlands, Abu Dhabi, New Delhi, Singapore and Shanghai. We carry pretty much all core design disciplines. When you start to understand what that means in technology terms, what that means for BIM and BIM software, we try to do it all. We don't provide project management and cost consultancy services, but we would attempt to provide everything a client would need. And we attempt to provide it digitally. We're about 1,300 staff now across the offices, and just about 60-65% of the staff base work in our architectural profession. So our journey, our technology journey, our BIM journey, began at the beginning of 2011 when the BIM Level 2 mandate was announced. We were experimenting with BIM before that point, but nobody really saw the need to move forward. Nobody saw the imperative. And then this came along. And I've shown this slide, these words, since 2011, but this was the core of it for us at that time. Government will require 3D Level 2 BIM as a minimum by 2016. 40% of UK construction work within the public sector focus on the industry and the importance of BIM. Now, for those of you that understand BDP, what that basically said was, if you can't demonstrate you can do this, a significant proportion of workload is probably going to disappear. So that got everybody up and thinking, well, what do we do? How do we address it? How do we start to move our business round to be in a point where this can add value to us and ensure that we can secure the work that we need to sustain ourselves? So what I want to do briefly is talk you through how we got to where we are now. Where we are now, what we think good looks like. Good changes probably every 6 weeks to 3 months. Good has to get better because this isn't a static thing. And what's the benefit that we see? And we are seeing benefit. As a business, we're sustaining ourselves. We're winning work. We're delivering work effectively and profitably using these technologies. But it's not easy. So first of all, how did we get here? Previously, I've talked through the timeline of all of these standards, and many of these are now out of date, but the standards came along. They came along one at a time, which actually helped us because as they arrived, we had the opportunity of understanding what they meant individually, rather than being provided with everything as a suite and attempting to digest it all. It came along in manageable chunks. That helped massively. Equally, The problem still is that they don't necessarily all fully align yet. That's coming. That's terrific. But as part of the learning process, this is the way that we had to go. We had to ask ourselves, well, why was BIM important? 8 years ago, it was important for these reasons. It was the prerequisite for securing work. Now, actually, we cannot win work without it. Back then, you could get your foot in the door, but I struggle to believe that there are many PQQs coming out now that don't ask us to demonstrate BIM competency. It provides a more consistent product. Forget level 2. But the software itself and the way that you work makes you more consistent, reduces risk and removes error over what it would be working in traditional 2D CAD. It provides design efficiency and construction opportunities. These are still coming thick and fast. At the beginning of our journey, I believe that we made significant advances once a month. Where we are now, these advances become... Sorry.
People are struggling to hear.
So
there's a microphone here.
Right. I can hear myself coming out of the speaker. Yeah. So. Thank you. Sorry, these advances become harder to achieve and more costly to achieve, but they're still coming. And differentiating ourselves from our competitors. That was valuable back then. Now, if we can still differentiate ourselves because of what it is we're doing, I worry for the industry, because I don't think we're doing anything that special anymore. So that was back then. I add 2 points to what I'd like to talk about now. We're beginning to move the AEC industry towards a digital way of working. That's the future. All we're trying to do now is make everybody understand that's the future and what that means for us as architects and engineers, and enabling a more efficient and sustainable approach to building an asset operation. The ultimate aim. So, moving forward, this was the multidisciplinary model for a school, Appleton Academy. I think it's outskirts of Bradford. It was the first multidisciplinary project that our London office did, architecture, MEP, and structure. And it was a challenge, but we built it. People are happy. It's in operation. But way back in 2011, everybody said to us, okay, you want to adopt BIM? Well done. Start small. Find a small project, find 2 or 3 architects, a client that will trust you, and have a go. This is our first project. This is Brighton 3T's hospital. At this point, and this is many, many years ago, I think we had a team of 30. We had external consultancy, training, supporting, showing us what to do. And if you look at the quality of the model, it's not terrific. But this was our first significant project. And it started to show some of the benefit. But where it really began to show value is this. So, cutaway floor plan. And this is way back stage 2, the old stage C. But what started to show real benefit was you can see all of the furniture is shown on plan. This isn't just for graphic purposes. This is demonstrating how the medical equipment fits in a room, linked to a database that allowed us to produce C-sheets, plan section, elevation, and reflected ceiling plan. But more importantly, schedule out all the equipment that's in that room, or understand any room one particular piece of equipment was in, linking database to geometry, and understanding the value that brings rather than disparate, disconnected bits of information. And what this project showed, particularly those that worked in our healthcare sector, this was a far better way of working. It was hard. You needed to have rigor and discipline. But provided you had that, the value that you could bring, the extra services you could bring to contractor, client, and owner-operator, well, we're beginning to show and demonstrate the benefit that everybody said BIM could bring. So for us, it began with a new way of working. And how did we go about implementing this? What was important? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to tell you all the stories everybody says at all of these events, but they're true. So the first thing, company-wide BIM policy, supported from chief exec down at board level. This is the rewrite that was presented this year, and there's nothing earth-shattering in what we're saying. But as a business, we're saying, this is what we're going to do. This is what everybody within the company needs to try to do to get on board, and we've got to make it work. Recruitment. Recruitment was a significant issue as well, because the skills that we require weren't necessarily out there in the industry. More so they are now. But we were finding people were coming in, joining us, going through our training program, and after 6 months to a year, they were more valuable to other businesses that were further behind us. So we had to start to recruit people with the skills that we needed, rather than bringing them in and training them. As that was happening, we also had to recognise that existing staff who understood BDP, understood the way we worked, we trusted, needed to be migrated across as well. So training became important. So training policies had to get introduced, and mechanisms to deliver training to significant numbers of staff had to be devised. And frankly, bringing in external consultancy for 3-4 days worth of classroom training for 6 to 8 people, and taking those 6 to 8 people out of profitable fee-earning work, all has an impact on the business. So how can you do it effectively? Documentation, understanding the standards, understanding the processes that need to get put in place to live by those standards, and understanding the documentation you need as a business to make it all work. There's work to be done and effort required there. And then the processes, the way that you work. This is our internal design process website. We recast this when the RIBA plan of work was rewritten, because we realised that the work stages were new. We knew what we had to do to deliver projects, but we needed to understand what that meant in BIM terms. So we had to define what these meant for BDP, and for at each work stage, define the activities that sat within a BIM workflow. And that then fed back into training. How do we train staff so that they understand it all? This is all incremental from the start of 2011. BIM certification. This was probably one of the most nervous things that I had to do. We'd spent significant sums of money over 3 or 4 years, purchasing software, arranging training, reconfiguring our entire IT systems to make sure that they work with the volumes of data and the software that we had. And then I had an idea that I wanted to bring in an external specialist certification body to tell me whether I got it right or not. Luckily, it was successful, but it was sense-checking the decisions that we made, sense-checking that we understood and interpreted the standards in the right way. And then other things start to emerge. Design coordination. You know, it's just a simple workflow, but shows that at a really basic level, the benefit BIM brings. We have a model. We have a door set in that model. We've got a door type drawing. We've got a schedule with the door identified. You change one, it all ties through together. But we were delivering. Now, this building is one of the first buildings we delivered with BIM for Cambridge University. And it shows the benefit. We can communicate the design. Everything is tied together, and it works. We moved into virtual reality. Any organisation now that isn't working with virtual reality, you're missing a trick, because this is all free. It's an outcome of working in a model environment. What you see here are a couple of school kids with £6 Google Cardboards, and they're driving virtual reality from their own mobile phones. We provide a link to a website, up pops the image, and they can navigate around a space. Now, doing that with school kids, engaging with them, but being able to put a client inside the building you're designing for them is one of the most powerful design tools we have at the moment. But we can take that a little bit further. Playing around with the technology. The QR code on the drawing. Anybody with a mobile phone, scan that, and it will be able to open up the same scene that these people are looking at. Again, it's all free stuff. But in terms of communicating design ideas, having the ability to do that on any piece of documentation, or printing out that QR code on an A3 sheet of laminated paper and putting it on a construction site so that any worker going into a room can start to understand the design intent, that's got real value. And honestly, it's achievable now, and it's almost an outcome of simply having a model and well-structured information. Innovation. I'm lucky enough within BDP that BDP supports us investigating R&D and bringing benefit to the business. But everybody can get involved. This is the level of detail standard that we worked on with MBS. This is a model for Queen Street Station in Glasgow, a project that is just concluding now. But with this, working with MBS, we were able to look at linking specification to model and classification. So here you can see we've highlighted permanent fixed vertical access ladders. In the model, you can see that there are 4 indicated, and then the specification that sits alongside that model element with the number of instances is all identified. Bringing information together, providing it in a more valuable source for those that aren't necessarily able to deep dive into models, all available. And then within the organisation itself, we went back and looked at our individual professions, and we asked them to set and define their roadmaps for technology adoption. This is one that's been defined by our building services engineers. Their review is that moving from engineers and draftspeople, they can move towards the idea of a generative engineer. So the steps along the timeline, where they've been and the plans moving forward, that informs many things. It informs recruitment, it informs budgets to achieve many of these activities, it informs software and hardware that the business used to buy to support that. But we're pushing every profession within BDP to do this at the moment. And it allows us to set the journey for our organisation, and then set the journey for the professions within the organisation. So where are we now? I'm going to show you 2 projects. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm quite sure that the consistency of what we do it varies depending on team, but this is typically what we're achieving. So this is a hospital in Gwent we're working on with Langer Oak. There's the substructure drainage, landscape, the frame, building services, and FF&E. Now the engineering isn't BDP, but the FF&E that you can just about see when the floor plan is. The envelope itself, but the CGI, and this is a fly-through that I won't run. Works are progressing on site. But what we also did was, working with the contractor, was take the model, and through scripting, through a series of scripts, we're able to break the elevations down, schedule out the individual panel components, and produce drawings that were then driving the precast manufacture process. This is the work that they were producing in different software, down to individual panels. Here's a bit of presentation material that we did for the client to describe how the panels were put together and brought to site. Now, what that does moves us from a manufacturing process, from a construction process into manufacturing process. So quality is better, health and safety is improved, and the program required on site changes because it moves from being linear to allowing you to have significant construction activities in parallel. So the facade is built as the frame is going up. The panels arrive just in time, so logistics on site is much improved as well. Now, we don't do this in every project. To be honest, it's one major contractor that focuses us on delivering this for them, but we know there's benefit. We're on probably our 5th significant project where we're delivering this. And it's reality. You know, the panel's on site, chap on the left's an architect, and then the building is constructed in this way. So everything that everybody talks about, it's happening. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm not saying it's happening uniformly, but it's starting to pick up pace. And so where are we going now? Well, the level 2 standards, we're starting to look at what that means in the ISO context. We've had BSI in, we've had a gap analysis carried out, slightly larger gaps than I was hoping for, but we're understanding what that can mean for us in UK terms, but also what that means because we are an international business. It's about a standard approach with increasing complexity for us. So I'm going to run through one more project and then I'm just about at the end. I wanted to show this, which is St James Quarter in Edinburgh. It's one of the most significant construction projects in Scotland at the moment. BDP are working with 3 other architectural practices and the same major contractor, Lang O'Rourke, who we're doing all the other precast work with. But this is typically what we do on these projects now. And again, it's real, it's on site. This photograph's probably about 6 months old. So the project itself has over 100 unique elevations, all modelled. Each elevation typically will have 3 1 to 50 drop sections. Each drop section, broadly, will have 5 details associated with it. The building itself, one floor plan sits on 1 to 500 is on one, I think it's an AO sheet. There are 16 different levels, and then each floor plan itself splits out into 5 sheets at 1 to 200. This is all coming out of model environment. We can use that to work into more complex details, 3-dimensionally, to describe what it is that needs to be constructed, and specification is added, and significant information within the model. But we're pushed by this contractor and through elements of their supply chain to take this further again. So here's a corner of the building, and this is our design intent model, starting point for us, following which we've been given a steel fabrication model, brought in, coordinated against. Precast panel model, and then looking at the support that brings this all together, an integration of external fittings, the fire hydrant box. The glazing model comes in, our insulation, and then services can get integrated as well. Now, this isn't happening across every package, but the major elements we're being provided with this information to the point at which the project at times is breaking our IT systems. The hardware we give to staff isn't powerful enough to manage the information. The network connectivity needs to improve. But this is what's beginning to emerge. And that's the build-up. So how's it benefited us? Well, I'm standing here talking to you because it has, first of all. And I've got a couple of metrics. These are quite old. And what I would say is that the benefit that we saw then, we haven't seen the same benefit year on year, but this was the first year that we were measuring in any real detail. So between the end of 2014 and the end of 2015, our staff line increased by 7%. Across the same period, our turnover increased by 24%. So 24% more work through the business with 7% more staff. That's an interesting figure. Our BIM adoption increased by 45%. The number of people we had using the software all went from just, let me get the figures right, just under 300 to just over 430. And the time they spent in that software increased by 77% overall. So we had just under 300 working at about, in fact, the figures next, we had just under 300 working at about 10 man days per month. And we were up to 434, 13.2 man days per month. This has increased year on year as it's got more embedded. But I'm quite clear, that shows a benefit. I don't like talking about profitability because there are many other factors that affect profitability, but we're a profitable business. And it works. It works for us. So what are the challenges? Well, I've got 2 more slides that aren't supposed to be insulting. I'll say that at the very beginning. And you'll notice that all the way through, I haven't delved into the standards and the acronyms. But I put this together because this shows the challenge for me, positively and negatively. And I'll say what everyone's sniggering in the background, I understand what this means, and I'm ashamed of that. But the OIRs define the AIRs, which inform the EIRs. Suppliers respond with a BEP, including an MIDP and TIDP, ensuring that information is held in a CDE to develop a project PIM and ultimately provide an aim for FM and ONET. Magic. Now, all of that is perfect. It makes perfect sense and it makes us all better. But the problem is, I don't know whether I'm ashamed of understanding that language, or I don't know whether the problem with the industry now is that it's probably us and people like us in rooms like this that understand that language. And something has to change. I think that we're at the point where the technology is being adopted by younger generations, and they adopt it well without question. And they adopt this language without question because it's all they know and it's what they're learning now. Those of us of my age and older have been brought up in a different world. And we need to figure out how those worlds come together and move forward together. Because without that, I'm going to have clients scratching their heads when I start talking acronyms at them and asking me, well, what's the benefit? And I say, well, have you done your OIR? Do your OIR. If you didn't do an AR, give an EIR, we'll give you a bet back and it'll be great because all this other stuff at the bottom is going to work. That's the challenge. And as I say, I don't mean it negatively, but we need to find a way past this and we need to find how we get it to work for everybody. And final slide is this, which I took from an article in BIM Plus probably about a year ago, which summarises it perfectly. I'll probably get the exact detail wrong, but you'll get the picture. If this is all of the search of all of the information that's out there about design and construction, everything seems to be linked apart from one particular little bubble at the top, which is the BIM bubble. Now, I would argue if we're all moving in the right direction, if we all understand what the benefits are, and we're talking about digital construction, digital engineering, Industry 4.0, that BIM bubble sits right in the middle, connects everything else, rather than sitting independently. So with that, I will stop. I'm told there's 2 minutes for questions or 2 minutes left. And I'm happy to share my views with anybody and answer any questions.
I think we've probably got time for one question. If anyone would like to ask anything. David, yeah.
So thank you for the presentation. Obviously, you've done a lot of work in terms of measuring. Did you? Sorry. Yeah. You obviously done a lot of work in terms of measuring benefits. Did you try and look in terms of benchmarking productivity? You know how long it took to do a 1 to 50 traditionally versus the speed of cutting it from a model. Did you go into that level of measurement? Is that something that needs to be done, do you think? No. We saw from Sam in terms, and I think we've all referenced the McKinsey one, the big sort of one, but do we need to get down to that level of, benchmarking within our disciplines and within practice?
It's what we're trying to demonstrate internally now benefit. I think the problem is that we didn't have a choice. We had to move forward. We had to adopt BIM. We were, this was all 2010, remember, when the recession was just starting to really hit. And any work that was out there, you wanted it. And that first hospital project, we were told, if you want to work on that, you need to do it in a particular software that we weren't used to, so we had to adopt it. The view of the business was that when CAD came along, we didn't have any measurement for CAD. Everyone was telling us it was going to be better, and it looked as if it should be better. But we just had to make that leap of faith. And to be honest, it was the same with this. We've run some metrics, and our view is that early stage is it's very hard to define. As you move into stage 3 and stage 4, you can far more accurately predict because you have to be disciplined. But the bit we still struggle with is early stage concept. People actually don't want to work in an environment that ties them down so much. So we've not got metrics. But I would argue, probably the point of the question, you end up doing a little bit more earlier than you would have traditionally.
Yeah. Can I ask a second? It's a second question. You obviously showed the suite of documentations and standards, and obviously you had the soft landings framework. Mm-hmm. Are you now making soft landings, the end user engagement? Is it helping, do you think, in terms of the BIM process to get the better outcomes, getting the user engagement, and actually supporting user decisions?
I don't think that we've got enough engagement from clients and enough projects that have been through the process yet to figure that out. I've got a story. I've got a story where we attempt to do something similar to soft landings within our own building, using data. We identify problems that we were then able to rectify that we wouldn't have had we not followed a similar type of approach. But I just don't think that we've done enough yet to be able to see the benefits.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. I'm afraid we don't have any more time for questions, but I'd just like to thank Alistair again for sharing BDP's digital journey, for highlighting some of the great things you're up to, and for demonstrating the benefits of digital construction. It's a great slayer for any of those digital Luddites out there, I think. So thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you.